A 12-year-old boy sets out on his very first overnight hike with his Boy Scout troop. The trail is steep, the forest thick with shadows, and the mountain air sharp with silence. Hours later, Jared Negretti is gone, and what searchers eventually found inside his backpack would turn this disappearance into one of the most chilling mysteries in California's wilderness. It was July 19, 1991. A crisp summer morning in Southern California. The air carried that distinct mountain freshness that promised adventure to anyone willing to venture into the wilderness. For 12-year-old Jared Negretti, this wasn't just another weekend. It was the culmination of months of preparation and anticipation. This would be his first big outing with his Boy Scout troop, a challenging overnight hike up Mt. San Gorgonio in the San Bernardino National Forest. Mt. San Gorgonio stands as the tallest mountain in Southern California, its peak reaching over 11,500 feet into the sky. The mountain is known for its unforgiving terrain, sudden weather changes, and dense forests that can swallow even experienced hikers whole. But for a young Boy Scout eager to prove himself, it represented the ultimate test of endurance and courage. Jared was slightly overweight, not the most athletic kid in his troop, but what he lacked in physical prowess, he made up for in determination and enthusiasm. He had spent weeks preparing for this moment, checking and rechecking his gear, studying trail maps, and dreaming about the stories he'd have to tell when he returned home. That morning, he proudly wore his crisp Boy Scout uniform, his merit badge patches catching the early sunlight as he shouldered his carefully packed backpack. The backpack contained everything a young scout might need for an overnight wilderness adventure. Food, water, a sleeping bag, and most importantly to Jared, his camera. He was excited to document his first major hiking expedition, to capture the breathtaking vistas and candid moments with his fellow scouts that would become treasured memories. As the group began their ascent into the rugged mountain terrain, the initial excitement was palpable. The boys chatted and laughed, pointing out interesting rock formations and wildlife along the trail. The path wound through dense groves of pine and fir trees, their towering canopies creating a natural cathedral of green and shadow above the hikers. But as the hours passed and the trail grew steeper, the mood began to shift. The altitude made breathing more difficult, and the rocky, uneven terrain demanded constant attention and careful footing. One by one, the physical demands of the hike began to separate the more experienced hikers from those still finding their mountain legs. Jared, despite his best efforts and unwavering determination, began to fall behind the main group. His breathing became labored, his steps more deliberate and cautious. The weight of his backpack, which had felt manageable at the trailhead, now seemed to pull at his shoulders with every upward step. But he pressed on, determined not to let his troop down, determined to prove that he belonged on this mountain. As the afternoon wore on and the group continued their ascent along the increasingly challenging trail, the gap between Jared and the rest of the scouts continued to widen. The terrain had become more treacherous, with loose rocks and steep drop-offs that required the full attention of even the most experienced hikers in the group. It was then that the scout leaders made a decision that would haunt them forever. Following standard safety protocol for situations where a group member was struggling to keep pace, they instructed Jared to stay put at a designated spot along the trail while the rest of the group pushed forward to establish camp. This wasn't unusual. It was a common practice designed to prevent exhausted hikers from making dangerous mistakes on difficult terrain. The plan was simple. The faster hikers would secure the campsite, then return for Jared, ensuring everyone's safety. Jared understood the instructions clearly. He was to remain exactly where they left him, not to wander off the trail, and to wait patiently for their return. It was a straightforward plan that had been executed successfully countless times before on similar expeditions. But when the scout leaders and the rest of the troop returned to collect Jared just hours later, they found nothing but an empty trail. The spot where they had left him showed no signs of struggle, no indication of what might have happened. His footprints were visible in the soft earth for a short distance, but then they seemed to simply disappear. It was as if Jared had walked a few yards and then vanished into thin air. The initial reaction was concern, but not panic. Perhaps Jared had misunderstood the instructions. Maybe he had tried to catch up with the group and taken a wrong turn. Mountain rescues were not uncommon in this area, and most ended with tired but unharmed hikers being reunited with their families. But as the hours turned into a full day, and that day stretched into a second, the gravity of the situation became undeniable. This wasn't a simple case of a lost hiker who would be found by morning. Jared Negretti had vanished without a trace in one of California's most unforgiving wilderness areas. What followed was one of the largest search and rescue operations in the region's history. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Over 400 people would eventually join the effort to find the missing 12-year-old boy. The search involved every available resource: local sheriff's departments, park rangers, volunteer search and rescue teams, and concerned citizens who felt compelled to help find the lost child. Helicopters appeared in the skies above empty San Gorgonio, their rotors echoing off the canyon walls as they systematically combed every visible inch of terrain. The aircraft flew in carefully coordinated patterns, their crews scanning the forest canopy and rocky outcroppings for any sign of the missing boy. Search dogs, trained specifically for wilderness rescue operations, worked tirelessly with their handlers, following scent trails that seemed to lead in multiple directions before ultimately going cold. National Guard troops were deployed to assist with the operation, bringing with them specialized equipment and additional manpower. The search effort was coordinated from a command post that operated around the clock, with teams rotating in shifts to ensure that every possible lead was followed, every potential clue investigated. The search lasted nearly 19 days, each day bringing new hope and new heartbreak. Searchers worked methodically, dividing the vast wilderness into grids and searching each section thoroughly before moving on to the next. The terrain was challenging even for experienced mountaineers. Steep ravines, dense undergrowth, and rocky cliffs that could easily conceal a small person. They found footprints in the soft earth along several remote trails, prints that appeared to match Jared's boot size and tread pattern. These discoveries energized the search teams, providing tangible evidence that he had indeed traveled deeper into the wilderness after becoming separated from his group. The footprints led searchers along increasingly remote and difficult trails, paths that would challenge even experienced hikers. Along these trails, search teams discovered wrappers from snacks he had carried in his backpack, granola bars and trail mix that his mother had carefully packed for the journey. Each wrapper was photographed and cataloged, creating a rough timeline of Jared's movement through the forest. The trail of discarded wrappers painted a picture of a boy trying to sustain himself as he wandered further from civilization. Perhaps most significantly, they discovered his Boy Scout compass, found lying on a remote trail miles from where he had last been seen. The compass was an essential piece of equipment, something that any experienced hiker would be reluctant to leave behind. Its discovery raised troubling questions. Had Jared deliberately discarded it, or had it fallen from his pack as he struggled through the difficult terrain? Other personal items were scattered along the remote trails like breadcrumbs in a dark fairy tale. Pieces of his Boy Scout uniform, small personal effects that created a heartbreaking trail through the wilderness. Each discovery brought hope that they were getting closer to finding Jared, but also deepened the mystery of what had happened to him during those crucial hours after he disappeared. But despite following every lead, investigating every clue, and searching every accessible inch of the mountain, Jared himself was nowhere to be found. The boy seemed to have vanished as completely as if he had never existed at all. Then came the discovery that still haunts people today: decades after that fateful summer of 1991. On one of the remote trails, searchers recovered Jared's backpack, the same pack he had so proudly carried at the beginning of his adventure. The backpack was found some distance from the main search area, in terrain so difficult that it had taken search teams days to reach it. Inside the backpack, most of Jared's supplies remained. His sleeping bag, some remaining food, and various pieces of camping equipment. But it was one particular item that would transform this missing person case into something far more mysterious and unsettling. Inside the backpack was Jared's camera, the same camera he had brought to document his first major Boy Scout adventure. The camera appeared to be undamaged, and most crucially, it still contained a roll of film that had been partially used. The film was immediately sent for development, with investigators hoping that the photographs might provide crucial clues about Jared's final hours. What they found was a series of images that told the story of a young boy's wilderness adventure. Pictures of his fellow scouts, scenic mountain vistas, and candid shots of camp life that captured the innocent excitement of the early part of the hike. But among these normal, everyday photographs was one final image that defied explanation and continues to send chills down the spine of anyone who has seen it. The last photograph on the roll wasn't of the scenic mountain landscapes that surrounded the hiking trail. It wasn't a group shot of his fellow Boy Scouts or a picture of their campsite. Instead, it was something far more unsettling and inexplicable. It was a close-up self-portrait of Jared himself, but not the kind of cheerful selfie that a 12-year-old boy might normally take. The image captured only his eyes and nose, illuminated starkly by the camera's flash against a background of total, impenetrable darkness. The framing was tight and claustrophobic, suggesting that the photograph had been taken in an extremely confined space, or that Jared had been holding the camera very close to his face when the shutter clicked. The expression visible in that partial view of his face was unreadable and deeply troubling. Was it fear etched in those eyes? Confusion? Exhaustion? Desperation? The grainy quality of the film and the harsh contrast created by the flash made it impossible to determine his emotional state with certainty. But there was something in that image that spoke of profound distress. The photograph raised more questions than it answered. When had it been taken? Where was Jared when he pressed the shutter? Why had he taken such an unusual and unsettling self-portrait? Was he trying to document something specific? Or was the photograph taken accidentally in a moment of panic or confusion? The darkness surrounding his face in the image was complete and absolute, offering no clues about his location or circumstances. It could have been taken inside a cave, under a dense forest canopy at night, or in any number of other locations where natural light couldn't penetrate. The timestamp on the camera indicated that this final photo had been taken several days after Jared's disappearance, but the exact circumstances remained a complete mystery. This single photograph became the last photographic trace of a boy who had vanished without explanation into the wilderness of Southern California. It was a haunting glimpse into his final known moments, a frozen instant that captured something ineffable and deeply disturbing about his fate. Despite the massive search effort, the extensive investigation, and the discovery of various clues along the mountain trails, Jared's body was never found. His disappearance remains one of the enduring mysteries of California's wilderness, a case that has puzzled investigators, search and rescue professionals, and amateur sleuths for over 3 decades. The theories about what happened to Jared Negretti are as numerous as they are troubling. Some investigators believe he may have become disoriented after separating from his group, perhaps suffering from altitude sickness or dehydration that affected his judgment and navigation abilities. In this scenario, he could have wandered further and further into the backcountry, following game trails or phantom paths that led him away from any hope of rescue. Others suspect that Jared may have suffered a fatal fall from one of the mountain's many cliffs and steep ravines. The terrain around Mt. San Gorgonio is notoriously dangerous, with loose rock formations and hidden drop-offs that could easily trap or injure an inexperienced hiker. In this theory, his body might lie in some inaccessible canyon or crevice where search teams couldn't reach, hidden from view and slowly being reclaimed by the wilderness. Exposure is another possibility that haunts those familiar with the case. Mountain weather can change rapidly and without warning, and even in summer, temperatures at high altitude can drop to dangerous levels. A 12-year-old boy, alone and possibly injured, might not have survived even a single night in the elements, especially if he had lost or abandoned crucial survival gear. But perhaps the most disturbing theories are those that suggest Jared may have encountered something or someone in the wilderness that led to his disappearance. While animal attacks are rare in the San Bernardino Mountains, they are not unknown. Mountain lions, bears, and other predators do inhabit the area, and a lone child would be particularly vulnerable. Even more troubling are the suggestions that Jared may have encountered other humans in the wilderness, people who meant him harm. While the remote location makes the scenario less likely, it cannot be entirely ruled out. The fact that some of his personal items were found scattered along trails suggests that his disappearance may not have been entirely accidental. The case of Jared Negrete has become something of a legend in the hiking and outdoor communities of Southern California. It serves as a sobering reminder of how quickly things can go wrong in the wilderness, even during what should be routine and safe activities. The story is often told around campfires and in online forums dedicated to unsolved mysteries, with each retelling adding new layers of speculation and theory. For the search and rescue professionals who participated in the operation, Jared's case remains one of the most frustrating and heartbreaking of their careers. Despite their best efforts, despite the massive resources deployed, despite following every possible lead, they were unable to bring closure to a family or answers to a community that desperately needed them. The photograph, that final, haunting self-portrait, has become an iconic image in the world of unsolved mysteries. It represents the ultimate unanswered question. What happened to Jared Negrete in those final moments before he disappeared forever? The image has been analyzed by photo experts, studied by investigators, and scrutinized by amateur detectives, but it continues to guard its secrets. For Jared's family, the lack of closure has been devastating. Without a body, without definitive answers, they have been left to wonder for decades about the fate of their son and brother. The annual anniversary of his disappearance brings renewed media attention and occasional tips from the public, but none have led to the breakthrough that would finally solve this enduring mystery. The truth about what happened to Jared Negrete, like that haunting final photo, remains locked in the shadows of the forest, hidden somewhere in the vast wilderness of Mt. San Gorgonio, where a 12-year-old boy walked away from his Boy Scout troop and into legend.